Hey everyone, and welcome to my Procreate demo for the piece I call the Palooka. A while ago, I did a few sketches of these characters that I just sort of called the Bad Bar series, just a rough bar. And this was one of them, called the Palooka. I did it about 5 years ago, so I wanted to sort of pull it out and give it some colors so I could sort of get back on the horse with painting, because I've been so busy with other things lately. I haven't really done anything for the channel or anything for any of my accounts, social accounts or anything, so I thought it'd be cool to sort of pull this guy out and give him a color treatment. So here we go. This one is really straightforward. I feel like I say that every time, so let's not call it straightforward, but let's just call it what I've done in the past a lot. It follows similar patterns to things I've done in the past. I tried to do a couple of different things with my colors and a little bit of a different lighting scheme than normal, just to spice it up a little bit, but you can see here that I start by flattening the entire thing, and since it's a simple headshot, that process is much quicker than if it were a very complex piece. And then I start rendering. And like I've done in the past also, the head, so his jawline up in his ear and what goes under his hair is all a separate set of layers from his neck so that I can keep that line fairly sharp. So at this point, I flatted him, and then I put in the first layer of colors, the next value up, and now I'm working on the next value after that. You can see he's got this really weird nose. It's sort of all jacked up. I know that with the colors that I chose here, it sort of makes him look undead, and when I first drew him, I sort of wanted him to be super pale, but I didn't necessarily mean for him to be too undead, but I figured with Halloween around the corner, why not do that? Why not make him a little spooky kind of looking? So I kept the same title for the piece as what it originally had, and then just sort of started going to town with this. And you know, I'm doing some pretty harsh lighting, some cuts on sort of his geometry here, like especially his upper lip, and so you'll see me soften that a little bit, but for the most part he's actually got some fairly harsh geometry going on with his face, because you know he's supposed to not be super handsome. He's kind of supposed to be a mess. So my main interest here when I started this was, okay, I want to get back to doing some new pieces. I don't want to create anything 100% from scratch, so that I can just sort of take that part out of the pressure of having to do something new. And so now I'm just focusing on what can I do here that's interesting with lighting. So I already know at this point what I want to do, which is I want to light him from the front, but then I want to put like a crazy harsh shadow on him, like some light is just coming through a couple of slats. And since you've already seen sort of the finished piece, you know that that's where this whole thing is going to go. What I end up doing is using the same lighting technique that I used on the girl with the flowers in her hair, which is I paint him with light coming from a certain area, and then I augment the entire thing with a shadow layer. We're going to get to that part eventually, and it goes by super fast, and then I just do a really quick walkthrough of that part of the Procreate file so you can see exactly what I'm doing there. One of the main things that I use in this, which is new to Procreate 4, is the masking system. I'm ecstatic that there's finally a masking system. In fact, I hope it expands further as time goes on, but I'm very happy with it, and I try to use it wherever it makes the most sense, and you'll see it making sense in here. So at this point we've rendered quite a bit of the face, and the eyes are all done, the eyebrows have been done, and now we're just doing the hair. You can see that there's sort of a weird palette here at the beginning with like a warm shadow and a cool mid-tone, and then I end up flipping that right there and put some shine in his hair. So now we go back to a shot of sort of the whole thing. You can see I'm starting to work on some value changes. And then right there real fast was the shadow layer. I know that flips on really quickly, because what that was me just throwing it on as fast as possible and then seeing if it was going to work out for me. I decide that that's where I'm going to go with the entire thing, and that's sort of, you'll see that get refined a little bit later on. So his jacket was also broken up in a slightly interesting way, with the collar being its own big flap, and then the jacket underneath it being its own big flat, and that was so I could make sure I really keep those elements separate. So the first thing I do is I start the next level up, the next value up on his coat, and slap some buttons on there. Thought it'd be kind of fun, you know, usually if you've got like a leather jacket covered in buttons, kind of like a punker or something, all the buttons are different. I thought it'd be kind of neat if they were all unified, they're all yellow, and they just had black designs on them. doing really simple stuff for the body part of the jacket. I knew that I was eventually going to really blur things and darken things, so it really wasn't that important for me to put a lot of detail in there. So at this point, the shirt's done, the jacket's being worked on, the pins are being worked on, the buttons, and those are just really simplistic. I wanted that to be simple. I wanted the buttons to just look like they were these like black marker drawn on yellow type buttons. Put some shine on them, and then I thought, let's put a lot of cuts on them to really sort of like Frankenstein this guy up a little bit. So now you can see here I've thrown in the background, and I started mimicking the lighting that's going across him in the background, and then I put a little bounce light there under the neck and chin, and then I put a little bit of a saturated rim on the actual cast shadow, and then there's this sort of bounce light sort of coming from behind him, like there's a red light off camera somewhere. Get some noise filters and things like that, and that's more or less the whole piece right there. So let's go ahead and jump into the Procreate file just so that we can get a little bit more specific about some of those last techniques there. So you can see here that sort of shows you the resolution that I work at. Zooming in tight there, you can see that it's still fairly clean compared to what gets seen on YouTube and Instagram quite a bit. And now you can see here in the layer stack, we have this layer right here, layer 53. I didn't really name my layers well here. That's just a dark gradient set to a light brown multiply that sort of casts from the bottom up. But then here's that big shadow layer. You can see that there's a mask attached to it, which is the parts where the shadow will not be. So here I'll convert the layer to normal for you so you can see that it's this light blue. It's like a periwinkle almost. And then it's set to multiply, it's set to 82%, that's how you get this shadow. And then when we turn on the mask, you can see that it pulls the shadow away from all of those areas. And that is all painted in essentially by hand, but because it's a mask, it's non-destructive. So if you wanted to do a shadow that maybe had more nuance to it, you could. Here is the saturated rim to that shadow that I put in. It's that color set to color layer with a lowered opacity, and that's just done by duplicating that shadow layer and then taking that same shadow layer and deleting away so that it's just those fuzzy rims that get that color, that little saturated color kick. So now when we zoom in here, you can see I'll toggle it on and off, and you can just sort of see the difference between having it and not having it. So the rest of the layers that we have there are, we've got a bounce light for under his neck coming off of his shirt, a little bit of a bloom coming off of his shirt and like the button there, and then we've got that red rim and that red backlighting coming up from behind him. Then we've got a blurred layer. You can see I took the whole layer and duplicated, the whole image, duplicated and blurred it, and then used a mask to knock away where I didn't want it to be as blurry. Then we got an extra dark vignetting on there, a noise layer, another layer that's got some adjustments to it, and then that last layer has sort of a, oh, actually that very last layer is just my signature. So that's the whole layer stack by the time the thing is done. So I hope that this was clear. If this entire technique was not clear, let me know and I'll do my best to try and cover it in fine detail in the future. There's the finished piece. That's what it looks like when all was said and done. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one. And if you're looking for me somewhere on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.